Today on Voice the Valleys, Reform previously saying that mass deportations were a political impossibility have seemingly made a massive shift, now announcing that they want to create a British version of Donald Trump's ICE and deport about 300,000 illegal migrants every single year. What changed? Could it be that there's new opposition on the block? We'll go over some bits to do with that. Not only that, ladies and gentlemen, it's now being announced that Safi Dawood, the alleged killer of Wayne Broadhurst, could potentially never stand trial due to not being fit to stand trial. And Plaid and the Greens show more of their unholy alliance in wanting to turn your communities into Kensington Philadelphia. All that and more today on Voice of the Valleys. Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Voice of the Valleys, yet again with your host, friendly neighbourhood far-right, thug, always satirical unless he's not, Mr. George Cresswell. Under-caffeinated, overstimulated, and overstressed, we'll get straight into today. Make sure you follow me on all the other platforms. Wherever you are watching this, I greatly thank you for tuning in. Got a lot of good things to go over today. If you missed it, my conversation with Callum Barker is now out of the members areas. It's on YouTube, on Rumble, on Spotify. Make sure you go and check it out. We had a great conversation. Stay tuned for some ones hopefully coming up in the near future and some exciting developments. If you happen to be around in Cardiff at any point tomorrow afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, I'll put a little thing up here. I don't exactly have it to hand at the moment. Public Child Protection Wales got an event going on in Cardiff tomorrow. I believe it's sometime around midday. I believe they're going to be marching to the Senedd, if I'm not mistaken. But you'll see all the details flashing up on screen in a moment. Anyway, getting straight into today. First off, some important things to go through. You remember we touched on before that Reform seemingly showing exactly how rattled they are by the new opposition on the block in the form of Restore UK. And I understand people's valid concerns with regards to Restore. Are they actually going to be successful? They seem to very much fancy their chances. Certainly, in my opinion, at this moment in time, the only real source of opposition with Reform just resembling more and more of the establishment every single day now, even using the same establishment smears, which at one point were directed at them and very easily could have got their leader Nigel Farage killed, if you remember when the girl threw that milkshake at him in the run-up to the 2024 election. Now they're using it to discredit and deliberately paint in an extremist light Restore Britain, if anything, is just like a, moderate right position, what I would call, at the very least, a common sense position, or the closest thing resembling to it. Reform seemingly taking this massive turn for the woke and essentially applying to British ethnicity the same thought processes, the same logic that the left applies to trans issues, as we'll get into a little bit later. It's gone to the point now where even many of the people on these talk show platforms, whatever else, so GB News have issued a clarification we'll go on to in a moment regarding Layla Cunningham's remarks on their show, where she said that it was nigh on neo-Nazi what Restore were trying to put across, right? They've issued a clarification. Layla, I don't believe she's never walked back those remarks. And as we mentioned, I believe in the last episode that Restore, again, I keep getting them fucking confused because they both start with the same frigging syllable. I hate it so much. It just plays on my semi-frequent retardism, which is what I'm now calling these little brain farts that I have from time to time. It's because I have a caffeine addiction, and anything below like half a gram of caffeine a day is basically me falling on my face asleep. Anyway, that's beside the point. Layla never walked them back, and Restore, and nearly did it again. Restore is now pushing legal action against Layla, and I believe against Reform UK. So, as I mentioned, we'll get into that clarification in a moment. It's gone to the point now where, as I mentioned, on Plank of the Week, no less, which seems to be a segment on Talk TV. I don't know what exactly the hell it is, right? Layla Cunningham was slamming Rupert Lowe and Restore Britain again, saying people will not vote for a party that believes you can only be British if you are white and Christian, even prompting Kevin O'Sullivan to comment to say Rupert Lowe did not say that. That doesn't indicate Restore Britain's position. And in fact, what Layla said, the system of governance of the UK is that it's secular, right? It's not informed by Christianity at all, which is obviously not true. Many of the historical documents that form the foundations for many things like laws and those things come from a Christian ethical and moral framework, right? There's no denying the Christian heritage of these lands. Doesn't mean that you'd have to be Christian to be British. Don't believe anybody's making that point, but you cannot discount it in the history of this nation's peoples, right? Or these nations' peoples, I should say, they're indigenous peoples. And there was a little funny moment where one of the commentators goes, well, how's that working out? Insinuating that obviously it's not working out so well. And it was a little bit of a funny little moment here where Layla sort of just had to go a little bit silent. She didn't really have a response. Here's that little segment for you, ladies and gentlemen.
British people are not going to vote for a party that only believes you can be British if you're white and Christian.
Well, hang on a second.
Hang on a second.
Rupert Lowe didn't say that. A 17-year-old kid said that.
Charlie Downs, who's been on your show, has said that.
He didn't say
Christian values. He said the word values.
So if you don't, so if you don't follow Christian values, you are not British. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not. Is
that what they're saying?
But for me, that's how I took it and interpreted it. Because I think it's basically the basis of most of our laws are due to Christian traditions.
No,
so yes, he is kind of right.
We kind of live in a secular government.
How well's that going?
You're saying we're not secular? We should not be secular?
Well, I don't think we are. I think this is the point the Restorer kind of bringing to the front, is that yet we have religion.
We're not a secular state.
Yeah.
Well, we are.
So you had that little moment there, and many people have chimed in about this whole notion of being secular. The whole thing people are realizing is that you have this system, if it is secular and whatever else, it's not able to stand on its own foundations. Sorry, guys, I've adjusted my webcam a little bit because I wanted to bring it down a little bit, but I realized I probably just screwed it up all the more. I believe Charlie Downs, he did weigh in on it. He quoted this post, said, I can't believe she's doubling down on this. Layla has once again asserted that I said you have to be white and Christian in order to be British. I have never said this on Talk TV or elsewhere. This is not Restore Britain's position. If you want to know where we stand on these matters, look at our page. Reform have again shown themselves to be incapable of engaging in good faith debate, instead resorting to name calling. Truly pathetic. They should sack whoever is briefing Cunningham to say these things. Dreadful messaging strategy. Nevertheless, perhaps Cunningham and I should debate these issues directly, one-to-one in person, put this whole thing to bed. And he tagged Dan Wootton in it. Dan Wootton, I believe, has agreed to host this debate between... Sorry, guys, I know I've royally screwed it up here. I don't know why I messed with it in the first place. Has agreed to moderate this debate. So maybe we will be seeing that coming in the near future. I highly doubt it. Because instantly you're seeing here, it doesn't seem that she could really hold her own with regards to this on this little panel. Obviously, there's more to this clip. Maybe there's a little bit later on, but we've got to move this show on anyway. So Connor Tomlinson also weighed in on this. Layla Cunningham is incapable of admitting when she is wrong. She just raises her voice and moves the goalposts. Her career history has been just as inconsistent, posting woke poetry, hosting iftars, taking selfies with Boris and Rishi's cabinet ministers. A deeply dishonest, unpleasant, over-promoted and unimpressive person. Utterly inadequate candidate for London Mayor, not to be trusted with power. So people really not reacting to this well. And as I mentioned, GB News felt that they had to come out, right, and actually issue a clarification, because it was on GB News that Layla Cunningham made the remarks that she said Restore Britain's policies were indicative of, neo-Nazi desiring Aryanism, essentially. GB News, then the anchor come out and said, that is not what was said. We want to issue a clarification for our own back. Maybe seeing that Restore Britain announced that they were going to be pursuing legal action against Layla. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know where GB News would stand in all of this. It wasn't anybody from GB News that said the thing that Layla said. It was on their platform that she said it. So they issued this clarification as well, if you needed more understanding of just how wrong Reform were on this issue.
On Tuesday on Jubes & Co, one of our panellists claimed a spokesperson for Restore Britain said in a recent interview that if you are not white and Christian, then you are not deemed to be British. To clarify, the spokesperson actually said that Britishness relates to ancestry and Christian faith, amongst other things. Restore Britain has said that its immigration policy has been mischaracterised. They strongly object to the comparisons made by the panellist to neo-Nazism and said wanting an immigration system that serves the British people is in no way neo-Nazi. On Tuesday on...
So they felt they had to issue that clarification. Restore Britain commenting on it, saying, we're pleased to see GB News issue a clarification regarding Reform labelling Restore Britain as neo-Nazi on their channel. Our legal team is taking steps against Reform's Layla Cunningham, who called us neo-Nazi. This disgusting smear led to a credible death threat against Rupert, which police are now actively involved in. That was the one, by the way, you would have seen the image floating around, right? An account by the name of Ginger Tom, who's a fairly prominent, as far as I'm aware, leftist account. You see him going back and forth in comment sections with Steve Laws and other nationalist figures and whatever else. He posted a picture. Sorry, guys, I have a really itchy nose. Not Zelensky's white marching powder, I promise. He posted a picture of the moment Charlie Kirk got shot, and the actual bit where the blood is on his neck is blurred, but it has Rupert Lowe's face superimposed over Charlie's face as he's recoiling back with the force of the bullet, right? There's no way to take that at this point is anything other than a call and incitement to violence. And I believe this way, again, police are actively involved in this now. Ginger Tom, after disabling his X account for a few days, I believe, then came back online and basically apologized for the whole thing. Maybe that was one of the things that was in correspondence between the police and Restore Britain, and Tom was saying, look, if you take it down, issue a formal retraction, and apology and whatever else, maybe again, it won't be as bad in terms of penalty. I don't actually know. Obviously, a lot of this is being handled by the relevant parties, right? Dare say, as we've seen, historical precedent, they're not going to learn their lesson. They're not going to pipe down in terms of their rhetoric and in terms of their actions or anything like that. We saw that if you were looking out in France recently with what happened with the funeral, the Antifa goons who were disrupting funeral processions for Quentin, the 23-year-old man who was murdered defending a women's rights group, a French women's rights group. So Cunningham is apparently going to receive a legal letter in the coming days. That was posted yesterday, so we'll keep you updated on that as more information breaks. But it seems that this is the biggest thing, where you can see the establishment cronies, whether it's in the media, whether it's in the political space itself, right? All forms of media, not just, talk shows and everything like that, but in the newspapers as well. Now, more and more of them are feeling more emboldened to push this and try and associate Restore Britain with elements of the right that they would say they don't necessarily align with, right? Because many prominent figures of what many would consider more extreme political opinions have voiced their support for Restore Britain, right? This came out in a Telegraph article, which I found linked before as well. And there was another guy, Richard Murphy, who calls himself he's all obsessed with economic justice. I think it was in his bio, some kind of intellectual figure or whatever else. Again, likening a lot of what Restore Britain wanted to do with the universities as being indicative of what the Nazis were going to do in the 1930s. Again, drawing all these parallels, trying to put this target on them to get them killed, right? That shows you where the real opposition is. The target has been massively moved off of Reform UK. In many ways, they've been the ones putting the target on Restore. Shows you again where the true opposition is, in my opinion, at least at this moment in time, at least true credible opposition. There are many sources of opposition, if you want to say that. There's Britain First, there's Homeland, there's maybe not so much UKIP, from what I've seen from one of Tenkoni's exchanges with a Muslim recently, where he said about we'll all live harmoniously and all things like that, going from Deus Vult to we'll live harmoniously with the Muslims as soon as he's pressed on it. It wasn't a great clip, but it was only a short clip, potentially maybe taken out of context or whatever. I do not know. Many people then saying that this guy who he was talking to is a known quite radical figure. I won't group him in with extremists or anything like that. I don't know the guy, but people who have had either correspondence with him or awareness of this guy, whoever he was before, this Muslim figure, has said that he's not exactly a friend of British people and Christians and whatever else. So very disappointing if that is the case, to see that from Tenkoni. But there's all many sources of opposition. There's really only one credible one, and one that has a really true shot of making the difference that we need in 2029. And I do think 2029 is probably going to be last gambit. It's going to be very, very bad from here on out, especially if we see things like what Plaid and the Greens and whatever else want to bring in. So get into later on the show. Guy by the name of Tim Stanley, a columnist and co-host of the Daily Tea podcast, writing for The Telegraph. My message to young people on the right: do not join Rupert Lowe's vanity project. Destructive vanity project is what he called it. So he starts off the article saying, I doubt Nigel Farage will win the Gorton and Denton by-election this Thursday. I don't think it would be Nigel Farage winning it. It would be Matt Goodwin winning it, but that's a bit pedantic. Reform's classic voter is poor and white in Manchester. The whites are rich and the poor are Asian. Moreover, the party remains stuck at around 30%, which is impressive and historic, but vulnerable to tactical voting. Okay, that's not exactly a bad observation. That's not exactly a bad observation. That's one thing the left are very, very good at doing, is forming together and uniting in this regard and not disavowing, as we see many people trying to get restore whoever to do, right? Kind of a little bit I saw touched on the David Starkey conversation with Rupert Lowe, which I covered on stream the other night. The right is constantly pressing, like either Rupert or whoever, to like either almost like semi-disavow what, say, certain people are saying and whatever else. That's a leftist tactic, right? To get the right to do that, to capitulate, to make them look weak. You don't see anybody on the left at this present moment in time, which is a very, very dangerous time, right? We're talking about the destruction of an entire people here and destruction of an entire country in very, very short order, right? And atrocities that makes Sodom and Gomorrah, you know, potentially blush, right? We're not talking about good times here. And you have people on the actual opposition constantly having to disavow themselves, right? Has to end no matter what. No apologies, no disavowals, right? Not when we're on the back fucking foot. It's that uniting on the left, in fairness, that has gotten them, large part, to where they are, right? They're able to put those things aside and see that common enemy, right? And then they keep themselves in the position where they've got just enough authority to keep pushing through the agendas, broad agendas, even if they disagree on small things and whatever else. And even if they can then, once the election's over, they can pit themselves against each other and whatever else to try and make themselves look like the true opposition and whatever else to try and claim that underdog status. But when it comes down to it, when it comes down to their genuine enemies, they know who their enemies are, right? And it's us. So we don't need to be making enemies of ourselves on our own side right now. This is the bit now where you see, you go down, you scroll through this article, and it gets down. Literally, again, like many articles, they try to bury things like problematic things, like if they see a crime and you just see man and whatever else, they try to bury like down in like paragraph 15 or 18, whatever it is, the name and the place where they're from, if it's a migrant crime or whatever. You go down to this paragraph, it won't surprise you to hear that Restore has become a magnet for some angry young men with very short hair whose shirts in a different era would surely be brown. Again, tying it in, trying to tie it in and smear that Restore are appealing to many people who are modern-day neo-Nazis is the insinuation, right? To some extent, Reform welcomes the contrast with Restore because it makes Farage look moderate. That's actually not a point in Farage's favour. That's the thing. We're in very, very radical times. Pretending that it's going to be solved with moderate solutions is just going to actually put more logs on the fire of the actual what, if you want to call it extreme right, or if you want to call it, you know, the what we may call the fringes, whatever term you want to use, right? It's not me using these terms, what terms other people to describe it may use, right? Sort of on the outside edges or whatever. More and more people, the more and more they see that the establishment are doing the establishment things with their supposed opposition, the more and more people you're going to push to those ends because they see no other option. That's the reality. Again, you have this massive, you know, tidal wave that's been incoming. People run away from it. But then if you have the people that say they're going to stop this wave, and then people go, yeah, and then all of a sudden they start facilitating the wave, but maybe just a little bit more slowly, people are still going to run away. People are still going to run towards that other side. I hope people get what I'm saying here with this analogy, right? The reason why Restore is appealing to so many at the moment is precisely because they don't look moderate in the way that Reform do. Many people on the nationalist side, on the right side, view Restore as moderates at best. But then it's these people in the medium, wherever else, that are viewing them supposedly as extreme, right? Many of Reform's voter base, well, would have been Reform's voter base, are massively flocking to Restore, not because they all of a sudden want to start Sieg Heiling and whatever else, but because they are the actual, you know, not only credible opposition, but they are truly moderate from a right-wing perspective. Many people on the right that want to see them go a lot further with regards to their policies on immigration and these kinds of things. The reason why it resonates so much is that seemingly Restore are the only party at the moment with relative mainstream appeal and an actual credible shot in 2029 of actually stating that the British are a people, actually humanizing them, refusing to dehumanize them. So when you reduce Britain to an economic zone, purely an economic zone, all of a sudden, the indigenous peoples that make up Britain, you've just dehumanized them completely. And that's what's been going on for generations. That's why people are so angry. Oh, GDP. Oh, look at the fruits of immigration, GDP, and all of this stuff. Right? When entire communities, towns, cities have been ethnically cleansed, colonized, and taken over. And people have cheered it on because they don't see the British people, as a distinct ethnic group made up of these smaller, very specific ethnic groups which make up the indigenous peoples of Britain. Restore currently are the only ones acknowledging that the British are a people. Much like Elon Musk said that a nation is its people, Restore currently are the only ones that are saying that in many ways you either are British or you aren't, at least going in that direction. Stating biological reality, in contrast to Reform, who are using the same logic that the lefties do with regards to trans issues and applying it to the British people, as we'll get onto later. But they might be coming back into the fold with regards to getting smears brought against them now. I don't believe this anyway in the slightest, given Nigel Farage's remarks before, given that they expect us to believe that a Muslim man, a Muslim mayoress of London, no less, right, is going to restore Britain's Christian heritage against the expansion of his own religion in this country, which would be in his and his wider religious body's interest, going against them for the sake of the British people, whom, being a Muslim, he would see as infidels and need to pay jizya and all of this stuff, right? Kuffar is the word I was looking for. You're telling me that's Reform's line. That's what they are actually going to believe, right? That a Muslim is going to restore Britain's Christian heritage against the current expansion of his religion in this country and the wider religious body of Muslims in this country, right? He's going to go against that with the state actively facilitating and providing no opposition to that currently, to restore Britain's Christian heritage, to actively minimize and fight against his own religious interests. People actually believe this. Well, guys, I'm selling Tower Bridge if you want to buy it from me. If you believe that. At least how it currently stands anyway. Hell. Fair to be seen. Who's to say at this point? Maybe you pull it out the bag and pull an absolute blinder. Who knows? Reform is planning to create a British version of Trump's ICE unit and deport 300,000 illegal migrants a year. Zaya Yousaf vows to end all welfare for foreign nationals and ensure those who enter illegally will be detained and deported. Reform UK will pledge to restore Britain's Christian heritage by stopping churches being turned into mosques and deporting almost 300,000 illegal migrants every year. Nigel Farage's party will vow to create a British version of Donald Trump's US Immigration and Customs Enforcement Unit to deport up to 288,000 migrants per year. The UK Deportation Command would have the capacity to detain up to 24,000 migrants at any time and will run 5 deportation flights a day if Reform wins power. The party apparently will announce, or has announced, this was yesterday, so maybe they have officially announced it now. Zaya Yousaf will outline Reform's plans for radical overhaul of the immigration system, with Britain's borders put on a war footing due to the national security emergency created by the invasion of illegal migrants, which, as we know, ladies and gentlemen, who've been watching the show, is an absolute drop in the bucket compared to the far bigger problem of legal immigration. But Reform are not going to address that because obviously they'd lose a massive chunk, seemingly, of the voter base they are trying to pander to. Party's pick for Home Secretary will use speech in Dover today to outline Reform's joint-up approach to immigration, policing and national security that will include a zero-tolerance approach to Islamist extremism and reforms to Britain's counter-terrorism programme. Forgive me for being very, very skeptical. But Farage seems to think that we have a very, very short-term memory, ladies and gentlemen. This is the thing. He seems to think that we have like goldfish memory, right? The myth of goldfish memory, as far as I'm aware anyway. As far as I know, they have perfectly good memories. I don't know where the thing of they have a 3-second memory or whatever it is came from. So in order to do this, however, so since January 20th, 2025, so just over a year of President Trump's second term, so this is a recent, according to Grok, as of the recent official Department of Homeland Security announcement on January 20th, 2026, marking 1 year into President Trump's second term, the administration reports more than 675,000 formal deportations and removals, an estimated 2.2 million self-deportations. So again, if you want to create something that is going to be comparable, maybe we could talk about per capita here, maybe we can talk about per unit or whatever. Obviously, America having much more space, much more population, right? Obviously, much more deportation numbers would be expected. In this way, maybe you could say that it's actually going to be very much so better than ICE in America. So at least what we could hope for, really. But Nigel Farage, if you remember, ladies and gentlemen, at one point said that this was a complete impossibility. It was a complete impossibility. So I do wonder what changed.
These people need to go, don't they? And by saying that you don't support, mass deportations...
If I say I support mass deportations, that's all anybody will talk about for the next 20 years. So it's pointless even going there.
So right? It's a rhetorical problem.
It's a political impossibility to deport hundreds of thousands of people. We simply can't do it.
So, evidently, like there seems to be trouble in paradise and Reform HQ at the moment with Isabel Oakeshott reposting a quote post from Lawrence Fox calling Matt Goodwin the establishment. That was quite interesting. So what changed? What changed? This was not long after the 2024 election, when a lot of Reform's base turned on them because of things like this. Him saying we have to politically accommodate Islam, mass deportations, which is what he campaigned on, the immigration election, he called it. Now saying that we're going to deport hundreds of thousands a year. So what changed? What changed then? Or was it just because you understand now that you have credible opposition to you and that you can be replaced? Right? Reform can be replaced. Now, maybe, to play devil's advocate, maybe they're trying to split the Restore vote? People go on about Restore now splitting the right-wing vote or splitting the Reform vote. Could we maybe then switch it about and say it's establishment trying to split the true right-wing vote, i.e. Reform are now trying to split Restore's vote? That's the way that I see it. That's the way that I see it. And given that Restore seemingly are going to be around for 2029 come hell or high water, I would say that's where we need to go just on principle, provided they don't do anything to truly dishonor themselves in the way that Reform have. Currently, as it stands, if nothing changes, if Restore keep their nose, very much so to the ground, stay on message, stay on principle, right? Regardless of if we 100% agree on those principles or not, if they show that they are going to be the true opposition that's going to resonate with much of the British people, I think that we should go with them purely based on the fact that they wouldn't have stabbed their whole voter base in the back the way that Reform did. They wouldn't have had the establishment turn that Reform did. And people should remember that. I think people should remember that in 2029, how quick it changed after the election. How Nigel Farage, the minute he comes back, the minute there's this rising patriotic sentiment and whatever else, he comes back seemingly to take the credit for it. And then right after, he either goes away, like he did with Brexit, never to be seen again, seemingly, until the next rise comes, because he needs to come back and act as containment. Or he will change and pivot his containment efforts in the face of the new opposition that's rising to curtail that opposition and prevent the true change that people want. because all he wants is to keep himself ingratiated with the political establishment. Whereas Rupert said he's not in it to make friends. He doesn't care about making friends. I don't think you'll see Rupert partying with Priti Patel and Boris and shaking hands with Keir Starmer. Based on what he said, based on how he conducts himself. I don't think you'll see that. That's a mark of a man who's thinking very differently. It's a mark of a man, I think, who understands who the enemies are, who the enemies of Britain are. He's not afraid to say it, that the state has become the enemy of the British people. It's clear day, night and difference. And please don't prove Farage right when apparently we do have short-term memory when it comes to the 2029 election. He was also then on BBC Political Thinking. Shows you he's going on all the BBC platforms now, seemingly having a massive rapport with the media, which would no doubt, if he was still the source of the opposition, be smearing him as Nazi and the next coming of Hitler and all the rest of it, right? He said he's not going to start drawing lines, ethnic lines, on what being English is. It's about how you feel, and it's about what your priorities are. No different from any of the leftists, it seems, on when they say, I'm not going to start drawing biological lines on what a woman is and what being a woman is. It's about how you feel, and it's about what your priorities are. Pigs and man, ladies and gentlemen. It's becoming impossible to see which is which.
Listen, I'm not going to start drawing ethnic lines on what being English is. Otherwise, we'll be back to DNA tests of whether you're Anglo-Saxon. I'm not going down that road. It's about how you feel, and it's about what your priorities are. That's what I'd say. What are your priorities? What is the thing that you really believe you're part of? And that...
Tell that to the men who believe they're part of the women biological class, the female biological class. Farage, we do this with anything? Can we start saying we're not going to draw, any lines on the different races? It's about how you feel, and it's about what your priorities are. So anybody can be of any other race? Well, that's ultimately what he's getting at. It's the globalist line. It's the globalist line spelled out right there for you. The same thing when he said, what is a Welsh person? Which is why, again, it really saddens me to see that the One Reform MS that we had is massively bigging up Zai Yousaf at the moment, saying that she believes that essentially he's going to solve all of Britain's problems. I'm like, come on, you lost me now. I'm like, that really makes me think that going into this next election, what are the Welsh people supposed to do? They really have no good option. Really. They really, really have no good option. There's no way to make things seemingly better in Wales, judging by this. It's just who's going to do the decline, who's going to do the rest of the decline over this next electoral period the fastest. And then how do we make sure that we put the person who's going to do it the slowest? But again, once you put them in, it's all a matter of trust. That's the thing. You forget this is like your vote matters all up until the point where you've actually cast it. The moment they have the seat, they don't have to be accountable to you anymore because you don't have an effective method to immediately remove them or challenge their power. Right? That's why they're going so hard after Restore Britain. That's what it represents. That's what it represents. When he said that the Welsh are just people who've resided in Wales for 5 years, pay taxes. So say what you want about the person down the street who doesn't pay taxes, who maybe doesn't have a job, can't hold down a job or whatever, but they can trace their heritage back in this country 1,000, 2,000 years. Are they not Welsh, Farage? Because they don't pay taxes? But meanwhile, if somebody literally came off here on a plane on an immigration flight 10 years ago, has been successful, started up their own business, pays taxes, contributes to the economy, that makes them Welsh when they literally come and all of their heritage traces back to, say, I don't know, Tokyo, or they've emigrated from somewhere in the Middle East, or somewhere from Africa, right? That's what makes someone Welsh, apparently. That's why the comments made by Charlie Downs and Restore Britain matter and are resonating with so many people. Matter so much and are resonating with so many people because they understand that. They understand that, no, it's not just an economic zone. It's not just somebody comes here and if they're successful, that makes them the actual thing as much as somebody who can trace their heritage back 1,000, 2,000, 500 years, whatever it is. This is literally some of the wokest shit that you could have. And that tells you a lot, doesn't it? Tells you a lot. They're putting in a Muslim, as I mentioned on his post on X, is going to stand against his fellow Muslims and against the Mohammedan religion and the religious expansion that has been unopposed and facilitated by the secular state, quote unquote secular state. An expansion which is in the general Muslim interest in the name of a different religion. What makes me sad, what makes me even more sad, is that people genuinely believe it. That's what makes me more sad. And like I said, the cultural and capital is going very much one way. Do you see, if you've seen the guys going out into their local town centres and whatever else at the moment, seeing literally with a picture of Rupert Lowe asking, do you know this man? As if they're looking for like their lost granddad or something like that. Do you know who this is? And currently it's turning up Nigel Farage saying that not even like 1% or not even 10% know who it is, right? In terms of this then, the proxy Angloid, the guy by the name on X, a young kid by the name of Angloid, done a good one as well, because he didn't seem to cut out the ones that didn't know Rupert Lowe. And he said that approximately in the one time he went out into his local town centre, again, it's a very small sample size, but at least you could say it's relatively random sampled, right? You're literally just going up to the street and asking someone, literally random person you see on the street, do you know this man? And it's about 50-50. So that says a lot. That says a lot, especially when Matt Goodwin says you spend far too much time online, because Rupert Lowe calls him out, because Matt Goodwin was celebrating that a seemingly halal takeaway was having a sign outside saying that they were voting Reform UK. Sorry, not voting Restore. This is the post from Matt Goodwin. Gordon and Denton by-election. You can see it's some kind of halal butchers or whatever it is. And it says, I'm voting Reform UK. And Matt Goodwin is celebrating it as great pick, vote Reform. And it's part of a wider thread where, again, literally in the thread, only Reform will restore Britain's Christian heritage, supposedly. But he's celebrating that something that is distinctly not part of Britain's Christian heritage is voting for them, or are voting for them. Because, again, they're trying to pander to this bloc because they simply want power. That's what they want. And ultimately, yes, that's all what we should be striving for with regards to this, because Andrew Wilson said this very, very well in terms of, Christians have been said that they shouldn't go for power, shouldn't vie for power or whatever else, right? Shouldn't want to rule, all of this stuff. You're either going to rule the lunatics of the world or be ruled by them. So I understand why they're doing it. But again, they're spitting in the face of the people that supported them at the last election by doing so. They're showing that they're, again, no different from the establishment. Matt Goodwin then saying, you spend far too much time online. Well, when he's out working his farm, and he's taking care of his land, where he's speaking in Parliament, saying things that many people are resonating with, and it's the rest of the establishment in the room that are booing him, spending too much time online, isn't Matt? Think about how much the quote-unquote online right have shifted the window with what it's acceptable to say. And again, it was a lot of the online right that were giving you a lot of your support at the last election. You should really, really remember that. He's also released as well, some people commenting, tagging Nigel Farage and being like, where's your independent inquiry? A new statement from the Rape Gang Inquiry, which I want to read for you in full because he put this out this morning. 9:20 this morning, our inquiry panel has heard extensive and deeply distressing testimony from a survivor detailing prolonged and extreme abuse, exploitation and trafficking beginning in childhood and continuing over a number of years across multiple locations in the United Kingdom. The panel wishes to place on record that we regard this testimony with the utmost seriousness. The survivor has provided detailed, consistent and specific evidence over an extended period of engagement with our inquiry. She will remain anonymous and she is safe. That's good, at least. She has made it abundantly clear that she wants the country to know her story. This is her decision and her decision alone. Elements of her account have been independently corroborated through presented documentation and vast evidence. The panel is also aware of additional material and supporting information that strengthens the credibility of the survivors' account and warrants urgent and comprehensive investigation by the relevant statutory authorities. Given the gravity of the allegations, we have thought long and hard about whether to release the following information. We believe, as does she, that the public deserves to know the truth about the rape gangs. The survivor's violent gang rape and abuse began at the age of 12. She was raped multiple times per day over many years. The rapes were filmed and used as blackmail. The survivor has stated that multiple police officers were active perpetrators. Money was exchanged openly, and this destroyed her ability and willingness to seek help. Police vehicles were used to traffic her, and some of the abuse events were called cop nights. The extreme pain she suffered included filmed torture in places called red rooms. The torture included waterboarding and strangulation by rope. Distressingly, she was raped by a dog, filmed and forced to rewatch the footage as the men placed bets. I hadn't actually read this full letter. I'd read to about the third or fourth paragraph. Oh, that's sickening. I don't know if that's like one of the worst things that I've read in these excerpts. You know, the bits about the glass bottles and all of this stuff. People don't realize that this was not just rape. This is war. You know the CIA and intelligence agencies, the strangulation, waterboarding, these kinds of things. That's what they do to terrorists. That's what they done to terrorists, and the enhanced interrogation techniques. They pioneered waterboarding, the cold room, right? Trapping them in this room with loud music playing 24/7, right? All of this other heinous stuff. John Kiriakou is a good example. He was the one that went on the record talking about this stuff, and he suffered persecution from the state because of it recently, semi-recently, a couple of months ago, went on Joe Rogan. 12-year-old girls, waterboarded, strangled, raped by dogs while they laughed and watched and placed bets on it. Remember that when Matt Goodwin says the British people don't want entire communities to go. Remember that. Coordination of this specific type of abuse was perpetrated predominantly by Pakistani heritage men. During this specific period of abuse, she witnessed the murder of at least 3 girls, one of whom was allegedly killed as a punishment for speaking to the police force. Agencies made a number of referrals to the National Referral Mechanism. She received positive grounds in 2018, but was not made aware of this status until 2021. She finally received conclusive grounds in 2023. The survivor is understandably weary of reporting the matter to the police, so the panel is seeking an urgent meeting with the Home Secretary, including the survivor, to ensure that the government is fully appraised of the seriousness of this evidence, to discuss the immediate steps to ensure the survivor's protection, to preserve evidence, and to secure justice. Our overriding priority is the safety of the survivors and the pursuit of truth and justice without fear or favour. We believe, along with the survivor herself, that the British people deserve to finally know what has been inflicted on innocent young girls in British towns and cities for many decades. Remember that. Screenshot this if it was on the screen, ladies and gentlemen. I'll bring it up for you on more things, so maybe you can pause this, screenshot it, burn it into your brain. Never see anybody softening now on mass deportations, remigration, these kinds of things, and the necessity that it is. Whenever Matt Goodwin again comes out and says that the British people don't want entire communities to go, and anybody that had any connection and knowledge of this to go, and that's being kind. Remember that. Make sure, and if he disparages you for saying you spend too much time online or whatever else, Just make sure you make your voice heard. Make sure you make your voice heard and understand that, no, we're not going to settle, and we're not going to be okay with you establishment types anymore. I'm not going to be okay with this kind of weakness just because you want to pander to the communities who did these things. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. If you needed any more evidence that reform were just really nothing more than controlled opposition, then now you have it. Now you have it, because no true patriot, at least in my opinion, would want to pander to these communities for the sake of a vote, for the sake of political power and glory, selling their people out as they do so. I could be wrong, but I don't believe they have the track record and the credibility and trustworthiness for us to give them the benefit of the doubt. It's the very reason why now they're coming out with a little bit stronger rhetoric on mass deportations and those kinds of things. That it's the opposition that has arisen because of their capitulation that has forced them into that position. I don't believe they would have gone down. I don't believe there would have been anything like announcing 300,000 deportations every year unless it was forced by the rise of another credible source of opposition. And just because people are scared and desperate, I don't think that they should be falling for the tactics which people like Reform UK and the establishment are going to be preying on, just splitting the vote and all of this stuff. Reframe it now whilst we have 3 years to get this into the public consciousness. It's not Restore Britain splitting the vote. It's Reform UK splitting the vote. In many people's minds, now, the time that we have, the vehicle has been chosen. May it please be a uniting force. And certainly Reform UK, with all of their establishment qualities. If anyone says that it's Restore Britain that are splitting the vote, I think it should be massively pushed back on them and say that, no, when you are the establishment claiming to not be, it's you who are splitting the vote, not Restore Britain. These 3 years are going to be a bumpy ride. Now, and some other things now. I've actually switched the order of how I was going to do these things because of how upsetting that last bit was. This next segment really is kind of an example of what an odd thing to say. What an odd thing to say. Remix News reported that in a, again, kind of thing where you're like, you saying that has kind of put it all out there on Front Street. And again, more reason to understand why people are so gung-ho on deportations and remigration, etc. Syria is apparently now asking Germany to not deport its citizens back home. Warning, it could make the country unsafe. So Syria, in this example now, are saying, please don't send our people back because they're going to ruin our country. So what makes you think what they are doing in Germany then, eh? Oh no, they're just as German. They're tax paying and all this kind of stuff, right? Oh, they're lovely people. They're lovely people. Damascus warns mass returns can make the country unsafe, while German conservatives insist protection claims ended with the fall of Assad. Said, please don't send them back. We don't want them. Maybe, I don't know, because they were people fleeing the Assad regime, if anything. So surely, if that's the case, you'd be thinking that they would actually be beneficiaries to the new regime that's come in and taken over. So if they're going to be making it unsafe, what does that say about the Syrian population in Germany? Syria has formally asked Germany for patience over the deportation of Syrian nationals, warning that the return of thousands could lead to insecurity in the country and worsen the country's fragile humanitarian situation. Despite the fact that Germany's got its own very fragile humanitarian situation going on. As reported by Welt, Mohammed Yaqub Al-Omar, director of the Consular Department of the Syrian Foreign Ministry, has urged Germany, quote, to understand the Syrian refugees and give us more time for reconstruction. You got more bodies! Send them back! You got more bodies! They can help! They can help rebuild. Let's send them back so they can rebuild their country, so they can build Syria back better. How about that? He warned that thousands of Syrians returning to Syria at this time could exacerbate the humanitarian crisis and mean that many people will have to live in refugee camps. According to Al-Omar, 1.5 million people are currently living in tent camps in northern Syria alone due to destroyed homes. More people, more homes built faster. Less refugee problem. How about that, Syria? Schools, roads, and a lack of electricity, large-scale deportations from Germany suggested would place further strain on an overstretched infrastructure. We need everybody from everywhere in the world, because apparently we have such an uncommitted, lazy workforce, whatever it is. But at the minute, we're able to send a lot of these people back to help rebuild their homes. Oh no, it's actually going to harm us because we don't then have the problems to play on. We don't have the humanitarian things to play on. If we get the problems solved quicker, we don't have the humanitarian things to play on, and maybe we won't get lovely, delicious foreign aid money. Politicians from the Christian Democratic Union and its Bavarian sister party, the Christian Social Union, argue that legal protection grounds no longer apply, but members of the co-governing left-wing Social Democrats were more amenable to Damascus's request. No surprise there. Very likely that those Syrians are the ones propping up, at least in some part, the left-wing parties, because those are the people whom they are pandering to, like we see in Gorton and Denton, where Hannah Spencer, who's going to feature at the end of the show again, is pandering to the Muslims. Right? So again, it's just the case they want to keep these people in because, again, less voting power for the German people if they have more foreigners in, and they'll push them gradually towards minoritization because then that is their complete subjugation. Right? Like Carl Benjamin, in fairness, used an analogy, which I'm not going to take credit for ever coming up with this analogy or anything like that. I, as far as I know, was the first to say it. That I didn't see any prominent political commentator saying it before, but I could be wrong. The event horizon analogy, right? That once you cross that demographic event horizon of minoritization, there's no way back. Right, much like you cross the event horizon on the black hole, there's no way back. He actually echoed this sentiment. I actually had like a little bit of a nerdy moment. I was like, oh my God, he said something that I said. But again, it might be me saying something that he said unconsciously because he might have said it a long time before. Who knows? I'm not taking credit for it. But again, it's easy to say, right? The only way you're going to get out of that at some point then by minoritization when you have no vote in the actual governance is by taking it back by force. You can't get around the force doctrine ultimately. Everything is a manifestation of force doctrine. Ultimately, whoever has the force, which is why the number one thing a ruler has to control is the army, are the one who dictates the rights that those people have. Right? Whether they're God-given or whether they aren't, wherever you get this construct of rights or whatever else from, you only have them if you have the capacity to enforce them, which is why army matters, which is why borders matter, right? So in order to now, because many places in Europe you can't own weapons, you can't own guns for your own self-defense, and if you defend yourself from a criminal, you end up getting prosecuted yourself, right? So you turn the legal system against you. That's one element of force. The police have been turned against you. We saw many of the police were raping young girls in these communities and using their cars to traffic them. So you can't rely on the police. You can't rely on the judiciary. Can't rely on your politicians, right? And the only thing that you could do to change that previously, well, at one point would have been you organising a militia and you have a conflict which you want to avoid at all costs, but that would be the way that you resolve it. You resolve it by force, or you resolve it democratically. And what are our politicians coming after now? The democratic element. And they have been doing so for a long time. That's why they want these Syrians to stay here, because they're politically useful, particularly to left-wing causes. So don't fall for it, ladies and gentlemen. By sending the Syrians back, we do a great humanitarian service for Syria. They have so much more in their labor force, so much more to work with, to rebuild the homes, to rebuild the schools, to rebuild the hospitals. Send them back. make Syria, I'm not going to say that actually, build Syria back better. How about that? That's a fucking joke, man. It's an absolute fucking joke. Another thing is a little bit of a joke, by the way, is I've seen people reacting to a recent video from Pete Hegseth, and I got a lot of shit at one point for from one comment in particular on a short that I made like ages ago. Karol Nawrocki, the Polish president, heavyweight boxing champion versus Keir Starmer, right? Saying that, look, this matters, right? In fact, Karol Nawrocki, he's clearly very disciplined, very strong, very masculine, right? Probably won't suffer fools gladly, very principled, and you see that through the manifestation in his physical training as well, right? Which is why one of the things that people respect a lot about people is physique and strength and those kinds of things, right? There's a reason why. Pete Hegseth quite clearly understands this as well, even goes so far to have a tattoo on his arm, mind you, that says Kufar, I believe it says Kufar, and it's not a, and by the way, again, in Islam, a Kufar is somebody who's seen as a second-class citizen, right, who's seen as subservient to the Muslims. So he's having that tattooed on him as a symbol of defiance. It's not as a symbol of submission, it's a symbol of defiance. Be like, yeah, I'm an infidel, I'm a Kufar, fuck you, what are you going to come do about it, right? Which, again, really contrasts with our political establishment, how much they want to capitulate to these people and damage the lives of millions and millions of people in the process. This video was released recently of him benching 315 pounds, which is quite impressive. It's quite impressive. You more and more nowadays, you probably see more people going in and doing it. Around the time when I first started getting into fitness and whatever, I was in a local gym where I was training in a leisure centre. Very, very rarely, I can think of one, maybe two guys who would ever touch this weight on the bar. And they were a lot bigger guys than Hegseth is. Fairness, if this is real, which I have reason to believe, I believe it, because I don't believe the military around him would let him get away for propaganda purposes with benching fake weights. It could be fake. I'll grant that. It could be fake. Hegseth is not a massive guy. Hegseth is not a massive guy, but you'll see there seems to be a little bit of flex in the bar. He has to lift his hips off the bench in order to do it, right? Indicating that I think there's a good chance he done this legitimately. But here's that video coming on screen for you now, ladies and gentlemen. I won't play it with the sound on because my editing software is probably just going to take the sound out of it anyway. But you can see here, he's got an elbow strap on, an elbow pad on his left arm, and he touches the chest. In fairness, boom, and you can see his hips rise, but then you can see him lock it up, boom, and you see they're applauding, they're clapping, right? And he's saying because this again, it's going to tune out all of this noise anyway, so we won't play it with the volume. I don't think that the military would have let him get away with that. I don't think that they would have made themselves a mockery in this way if they were going to use fake weights, which, again, it could be. It's quite clearly, I think it's a rogue rig, which obviously they're using, and these are rogue bumper plates. Rogue do these bumper plates. For those of you who might not know about, fitness manufacturing and stuff like that, you fairly often, especially in a lot of gyms in America, see these rogue fitness bumper plates. So there's a lot of debate in the comments. Is it real? Is it not? However, one thing I will say, there is another video of him doing it, which maybe from a little while ago. It was posted on February 19th of this year. But again, I'm not sure exactly when it is from. But these, as you can see, are very, very different plates. And it appears to be more in a public gym kind of setting, which if this is true, then again, lends more credibility to this was a real lift. And again, it's a marker of strength. It's a marker of discipline, right? These masculine qualities which are needed in these leadership positions, especially in the Secretary of War, right? You do not want a limp-wristed Keir Starmer being your Secretary of War, certainly not a leader of the country. And this would be an indication that, the very least, he would have the physical and mental fortitude and also the humility in a way that everything that he's expecting the military to do, right, he can also do, and to a lesser extent does, as a matter of duty.
All right, here we go. For the detail, 3 plates going on the squad. Long time coming. Let's see. Let's go. Gotta keep the butt down. Gotta keep the butt down if I can. All right, don't lift. I got it. 1, 2, 3. I got it. Oh, I got it. Don't touch it! Yeah! Get it, baby. There we go! Ha! All right, here we go.
I've had a moment just like that in the gym. Poor guy. I'm training with my friend once, and I was on very, very much too much caffeine for that session, and scared the shit out of him in the middle of the gym because he was about to touch the bar, and I said, "Don't you dare touch that fucking bar," at the top of my fucking lungs, and he looked at me as if, you know, he was absolutely terrified, like a school teacher had scolded him in front of the middle of the class. And I'm like, I am so sorry. When I calmed down after that set, I was so sorry. I wasn't benching anything close to what Hegseth was benching here. You can see that one looks a lot more thin. You can see he seems to have a slight imbalance one side to the other. And if the weights were fake, if it was a lot lighter than what you would think, you probably wouldn't see that. You probably wouldn't see that because it would be a lot easier to just, override that. The imbalances side to side will really come out when you get to the maxes of what is possible for your current physiological adaptation, right? So when you're getting a set close to failure, if you imagine somebody's doing your overhead presses with dumbbells, right? And they've done like 15 reps or whatever, as they're getting close to failure, it might be that one arm starts failing before the other. That's when you notice it. When it's at very high intensities, whether it's fatigue or the actual weight on the bar, right? Because they can both be used for proxies for each other. That's when you see maybe those little imbalances come out. And that's where you see that the bar was very slanted at one point. Maybe this is only one of the few times he was going for it. Maybe he slowly worked up to this. That makes me think that it's legit. You can fake these plates as well. You can fake the bumper plates. You can fake these plates. Brad Castleberry was a famous fitness influencer once upon a time. I think he still is. I don't know. I haven't seen anything coming up from my feed at any point from him very, very long time. But he's one of the ones being exposed by Kenny KO for using fake plates and stuff like that in his gym lifts and stuff like that. Now, he's an athletic frigging monster, right? Absolutely. There's no denying that. But again, you can fake these things, and they do provide a very, very good illusion when they are used. So in this instance, I think he actually done this legit, and I think this matters. I think this absolutely matters. That's why I made that podcast a good while ago about like silent acts of political protest, right? Government wants you either so fat and so inebriated, so prone to vice that you literally can't move and all of this stuff, that you can't be a revolutionary, right? You literally can't be like a fit, military, paramilitary counter-revolutionary operative, right? Or like in the North Korea option, they starve you so that you can't be it, right? So they're trying to get you to either end of the extreme. Right in the middle is where you want to be, right? A good fitness foundation, good level of strength, good level of muscle mass, ideally through resistance training, and that's going to have a lot of good effects on like your hormones and stuff like that as well, being in that good range for yourself. And that could be, an easy way to quantify this is via body fat percentage. That could be 10% for someone. That could be more 15-20% for someone, right? It doesn't mean that you all need to have like massive ripped abs and everything like that, right? That's going to be slightly different. But again, being in what is the best physiological range for you, for most men in particular, it's going to be somewhere around 15% body fat, but it's going to have a lot of good effects on your hormone balance, especially like testosterone and all of those things as well, which obviously the government are going to try and massively push down and down and down, because they don't. The one thing that's going to get us out of this mess is strong men, right? So you see people like Charlie Downs and Lewis Brackpool and Connor Tomlinson, these younger guys that are coming through, they command a lot of presence. They have a lot of masculine energy, right? And you have other figures as well. Steve Laws, for all the things they say about him, 7 stone Steve Laws and all the rest of it. That's where one time I would say that, it doesn't exactly matter so much. The guy still commands an impressive presence. And there's a lot of people that don't seem to want to have conversations with him, seemingly because they're ducking those conversations, right? So there's another thing to be there as well. It's not just the physical, it's the intellectual and how you handle yourself on that side as well. But there is a certain quality to be had here about self-discipline, about strength, about these kind of masculine qualities, especially when you're looking in positions of leadership. And when you look at the people who the Biden regime put in, like the, what was her name? The health, like their equivalent of like their health minister, who Robert F. Kennedy, RFK Jr. came in and replaced, right? And how the things have changed since then, right? It's not all optics. It matters what is behind those optics. But if you want to get people behind you as well, right? If you want to give something that people want to look up to and be like and improve their lives in that way, give them something like a Pete Hegseth over the people who are in the Biden regime 10 out of 10 times. Similarly, you look at the difference between, in ours is a little bit different. In Britain, the political landscape is a little bit different because seemingly all of our people are just like really old, really old for the most part. But again, you have a look at the people that I mentioned just coming through, and you see them where similar types of energy are coming from, kind of like that radical fuck you kind of energy, and really obviously backing yourself and holding yourself to those higher standards is massively, massively important, especially at the highest levels of governance. So I saw this was a big thing going around at the moment. Does it matter for like political governance, stuff like that? Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Your physical health is going to be one of the big things, the biggest thing that keeps your mental health, your emotional health, and everything like that in check. So absolutely, absolutely, it does matter. Matters for every single person in every single aspect of their lives, no matter what job you do. Just take care of your family and everything like that. It absolutely matters. And it absolutely matters when it's at the highest levels of governance as well. So this is now going back on to very much more so depressing news now, before we get into the last couple of news stories for today. Enjoying the show and want to see more of it? Then please consider supporting it via one of the donation options down below. Maybe even taking out some of the memberships and getting access to some exclusive content and members perks. Hope to see you there. Thank you. A post came out from Court News UK. Post came out from Court News UK. Afghan lorry migrant Safi Dawood killed binman Wayne Broadhurst. Remember that from a little while ago. Stabbed him no less than 14 to 15 times in the middle of the street as he was walking his dog, right? Maybe mentally unfit to ever stand trial. Maybe too mentally unfit to ever stand trial. I don't know how you can characterize this as anything but, a horrendous miscarriage of justice. Safi Dawood, by the way, entering on the back of a lorry in, I believe, 2022, if I'm not mistaken. I'll quickly see if the Express article I have here details when he came in. But he's an illegal migrant. He's an illegal migrant from Afghanistan. And they've now said that he's not going to be fit to stand trial, potentially. He entered the country illegally. I'm just trying to see if anybody clarifies when exactly it was. I think it was in 2022. So what we know at the moment, yeah, he was granted, in 2020 he came in, he was granted asylum and leave to remain in 2022. Why did they put that right at the bottom of the article? Does my head in sometimes. Anyway, so Afghan migrant accused of killing dog walker not fit to plead or stand trial, apparently. Man was killed last year, 2 others seriously injured after the attack in October. Apparently this guy has Benjamin Netanyahu as one of his, correctional officers or whatever. But now we have this guy. He's been said that he's, after being charged with murdering Wayne Broadhurst, as well as 2 counts of attempted murder in relation to the incident in Midhurst Gardens in Uxbridge. He appeared at Southwark Crown Court via video link from Broadmoor Hospital in Berkshire in the 15-minute hearing as a prosecutor told how he had been assessed by a psychiatrist who concluded he was not currently fit to plead or stand trial. Prosecutor Deanna here said the psychiatrist has not indicated any time frame of how long the defendant will remain unfit, if he's likely to recover, and matters of that nature, so we don't know if the defendant is likely to become fit. So they're now exploring potential options of keeping him in this hospitalization indefinitely or whatever, presumably at taxpayer expense. What I want to know is, why do the taxpayers have to pay for this? Why would the taxpayers, in theory, have to pay for this guy's upkeep and indefinite incarceration in this hospital facility when he came in on the back of a lorry and then murdered a guy just for walking his dog down the street, stabbing him in one of the most brutal videos of a murder in recent memory? Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't just a one stab and done deal. Like, he didn't just stab him and then run away, right? He brutalized him when he was on the ground, right? 14 to 15 times, right? Wayne Broadhurst was stabbed by this guy. People say we're a soft touch. You wonder why, right? You've got in Sweden, Eritreans just saying that they get these overwhelming urges to go hurt people, and the Swedish authorities would just let them back out on the street with not even a hospitalization or whatever. Because again, how dare we be seen as racist, right? It is alleged that Mr. Dawood was running... Fucking hell. It was alleged that Mr. Dawood was running amok with a large knife during the attack, which saw Mr. Broadhurst stabbed 14 times. Hearing told Mr. Dawood is an Afghan refugee with a leave to remain in the UK until 2027. He has allegedly been due to leave his accommodation in Uxbridge in 3 days when he's accused of launching the knife attack on October the 27th. Day's landlord, Shazad Farouk, had gone to the annex where he was living and found him allegedly armed with a large knife. Mr. Farouk ran out of the house to seek assistance from neighbours in Midhurst Gardens. He was left with life-changing injuries, whilst a 14-year-old boy, who cannot be named, has been discharged from hospital after receiving knife injuries to his hands. Mrs. Here added in a previous hearing, the police were called and arrived on the scene soon afterwards, and they found Mr. Broadhurst lying injured in the street, and despite best efforts of emergency medical services, they were unable to save his life. He was pronounced extinct. He was pronounced extinct just before 5:45. Is that a euphemism we're using? Is that a term that we're using to describe, what's happening to the British in their own countries now? Is that what we're using? We're using terms like extinct. Home Office confirmed that Mr. Dawood entered the UK clandestinely via lorry in 2020. He was granted asylum and leave to remain in 2022. A provisional trial date has been set for July, lasting up to 3 weeks. Have fun with that, you open borders loons. You cost a man his life. A good, reputable member of society, it seems, Binman. Got a 14-year-old boy injured, had to go to hospital. Nearly cost the landlord his life as well. All because you guys, the great unwashed, want to hold placards and signal your faux virtue and all of this stuff. I hope it was worth it. I hope it was worth it, because it will be remembered. It will be remembered. Make no mistake about it. Should be treading very, very carefully with the atmosphere of many of the British people at the moment. They're very, very patient. Below has echoed this. They're very, very patient people. Very much so too patient in the modern day. But like volcanoes, that the more and more pressure that builds eventually before they go off, the more destructive they are. Just watch, because the more and more patient the British people are, more and more that energy is going to build. And the more and more destructive, I suppose, the response will be for you. For you guys who enabled, facilitated, and in many ways put people in prison or tried to coerce them to change their beliefs, despite knowing that the truth is on their side, by saying that you're going to go to their employers, get them fired, all of this stuff. Trying to harm the livelihoods of their children. Coming after their children with these policies. Just, you want to hope that it really never reaches that point where that pressure does get released. Because it's not going to end well for a lot of you. British people have very long memories, much as you'd like to think that they have very short ones. Last things for today now, ladies and gentlemen. More things to do with the Greens. So, the Greens want to abolish landlords, right? No owning second, no predatory rents, no owning second properties, all of this stuff is another means to make money and everything like this, right? They want to abolish landlords, seemingly make everything state-owned, very much so in line with the you will own nothing and be happy types. Which brings me on to something a little bit later on where somebody actually called the Greens anti-establishment, which is hilarious. Move that to the end, actually. But the Green parties Brexit-mocking eco-zealot candidate in Gorton and Denton, returning star of the show Hannah Spencer, has been revealed to seemingly be everything, everything that the Greens stand against. Owning a petrol car, driving a petrol car, owning 2 homes, and has a taste for globe-trotting holidays. So now it's being reported, ladies and gentlemen, that the Greens candidate for Gorton and Denton by-election faces allegations of hypocrisy after jetting off on foreign holidays and co-owning homes worth over £1 million. Hannah Spencer's Instagram account also shows the environmentally conscious prospective MP posing what appears to be a petrol car emblazoned with campaign slogans. Always, ladies and gentlemen, rules for thee, but not for me. Rules for thee, but not for me. Net zero for you. Lovely fossil fuel petrol cars for me. Lovely central heating and log burners for me. You guys get 1 short haul flight every 3 years. I get multiple holidays to the Bahamas every year. How about that? That sounds fair, right? That sounds fair in the minds of a Green MP. But what would you expect for a person seemingly with the IQ of a steak bake? Miss Spencer, 34, is a leading left-wing candidate against Matt Goodwin's Reform UK representation, former university academic turned GB News presenter. Labour, defending the seat previously held by Andrew Gwynn, stepped down after being part of a WhatsApp group which exchanged messages mocking voters. Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham was blocked from standing by the party's National Executive Committee, and Angeliki Stogia, a local councillor, has been selected instead. That was the person, by the way, that if you mentioned Labour were trying to bribe people with food. Right, much in the same way that the communists tried to bribe people with food, i.e. do what we say or starve to death. Miss Spencer announced her candidacy with a press release stating Greens pick local plumber to win Gorton and Denton. Very, 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 very sceptical of that. But we'll go down here. Ooh, what's this? At Cuidad de las Artes y las Ciencias. See, if it's a place I can't even pronounce, ladies and gentlemen, certainly a prospective Greens councillor seemingly should not be going there by their own party's policies, right? Had such a nice break in the summer. Obviously, this was 10 years ago, so maybe things have changed since then. She told locals, I've lived in the constituency and still work here, so I know the issues if people want to change. Didn't she move out? Didn't she decide she either wanted to or moved out of the area because of the influx of foreigners and foreign takeaways and stuff like that? There's another thing that got exposed recently. While Gorton and Denton contains some of Greater Manchester's most deprived neighbourhoods with incomes 25 PC below the national average, Miss Spencer owns 2 houses in Greater Manchester's most affluent postcodes with her former biochemist partner, Dr. Stephen Holman. Funny how that works, isn't it? Funny how that works. Numerous long and short haul holidays trips documented on social media include Amsterdam in 2018, separate Spanish trips to Valencia and Barcelona in 2016, and the transatlantic jaunt in 2014 to New York and San Francisco. Certainly far away from the UN's 1 short haul flight every 3 years policy. Oh. And the same year, she also travelled to Hungary. No doubt realising all of the white people there and realising how much better it was. And, seemingly then realising it just means she needs to double down on the destruction of her homeland, seemingly. And another thing you'll always know is that these people will always have place to go, ladies and gentlemen. It's people like you and me that are not going to have anywhere to go if they end up turning our communities into the shitholes that they turned everywhere else into. In a social media post from February 8th, Miss Spencer posing next to a car covered in the Green Party's logo and campaign slogans. However, the vehicle appears to not be eco-friendly electric or hybrid model, but a turbo petrol-powered Vauxhall Astra. Oh, it's hilarious. Sorry, I thought the next photo was going to be... Here it is. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. It's fucking turbo. It says it right there. Oh, it's hilarious. You've got to laugh, otherwise you'll cry, ladies and gentlemen. In 2016, an Instagram post mocking the Brexit referendum result, quote unquote, Miss Spencer described as she joked with a customer that leaving the European Union would make life more expensive. Sadly, so far, that does seem to have been one thing that has been at least been, a little bit more credibility behind it because of how much Brexit has been sabotaged. Makes you think then, who was the person that got Brexit done and left at the height of what should have been a crowning victory? Oh, yeah, Nigel Farage. You're all going to pay more for me to come and fix your toilet, she wrote, accompanied by the hashtag world's most expensive plumber. I thought you guys were for the poor. I thought you guys were for the poor and underprivileged. So shouldn't you not be touting things like this? Oh, absolute travesty, ladies and gentlemen. Absolute travesty. But it doesn't end there. It doesn't end there. One thing that's really destructive, we can go on about Hannah Spencer being a little bit of a joke, right? Not being serious when it does seem that she does have good perspective, chance of going in court and dented, who knows. One thing that is very much more dangerous with regards to the Greens and how people perceive them as well. Very sad to see an account based in Wales. Actually, I'll bring it up now. I wasn't going to bring it up till later. An account seemingly, at the very least, based in Wales called Cymraeg Correct, correcting misinformation about the Welsh language, saying they should be re-looking at their views on the political landscape as well. Said this in response to somebody saying that the Green Party is being attacked relentlessly in the most absurd ways because they now pose a threat to fascist, paedophile protecting establishment. Should encourage everyone who wants change to back the Greens. Bear in mind again that they are pushing a lot of the same agendas forward that have enabled a lot of this, right? This account said, the establishment want a reform government because reform are the establishment. Starting off, in my opinion, not so bad. Because, as you know, I have noticed a lot of reform changing for the establishment. Then they say the Greens are anti-establishment. And they completely ruin it. They completely ruin it, man. Because the Greens want all of the same things that this seemingly government wants, the globalist system wants. Right? All the while just completely not realizing the levels of hypocrisy that are on display, or doing so and thinking that the British people, in this case the Welsh people, are seemingly so stupid to fall for it. And if I was English, that's who I'd be voting for. As I'm Welsh, it would be Plaid Cymru for me. So this person is going to be voting for their communities being turned into Kensington, Philadelphia, which is more dangerous. So enough of the silliness now, ladies and gentlemen. Outcry as Green Party say they want to legalise all drugs. Now, let me tell you, I've been on my fair share of drugs in my time. I was on a tremendous cocktail of some fantastical substances when I was fighting for my life in a coma inside of ICU. I've seen some things, let me tell you. I've been on some spiritual journeys in my time. This is absolutely horrendous, as for reasons we'll get into a little bit later. The reason why this is important for Wales is echoed by people like Plaid Cymru. And I do not want your family or you, whether it be your daughters, brothers, sons, whatever else, turning out like some of the sorry souls in Kensington, Philadelphia, who are ground zero, really, for these kinds of policies that we really should be learning from. Green Party says they want to legalise all drugs, including crack cocaine, heroin, and date rape chemical GHB. So they want to make it easier for date rapists to enact their craft. Is that what they want to do? Drugs, including crack cocaine and heroin, should be legalised for recreational use because they enhance human relationships, according to the Green Party's policies. Kind of fitting. It is fiction, right? I'm watching Breaking Bad at the moment, and we've not long just moved past. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. Spoiler coming up. Jane, young character by the name of Jane, who goes through heroin relapse and ends up choking to death on her own, vomit, essentially, because, in the context of the story, Walter goes to the residence where Jesse and Jane are. They're sleeping, tries to wake up Jesse because he needs the meth, and then the whole thing about Breaking Bad, as you'll know, Jane ends up rolling onto her back, chokes to death, and Walt doesn't do anything, lets nature take its course, rather inhumanely, and it's to highlight his increasing loss of his own humanity, right? Enhance human relationships. But you've only got to look at that and see how much the relationships were enhanced, supposedly, when then she started missing her rehabilitation, her like focus group sessions in rehab, right? Her rehabilitation sessions. And they would spend the entirety of the time that they were on heroin absolutely conked out of their mind, literally unconscious on their side, so they don't frigging choke in their sleep and die. Supposedly that's meant to enhance relationships. This is absolutely nuts. This is so destructive. It's unbelievable. Zach Palance's party plans to create a direct partnership between the government and the South American drug cartels to introduce a sustainable supply of cocoa and cocaine to Britain. So now, supposedly going from smash the gangs to can we get some of the stuff that the gangs are bringing in? What? Newly unearthed policy proposals show the Greens want to see cocaine drinks brought to the high street and Class A drugs, including ecstasy and psychedelics, sold at nightclubs and music festivals. They seemingly at nightclubs and music festivals want to make it easier for predators to do predatory things. It's already bad enough. You guys saw Woodstock? Woodstock 99? People think they're anti-establishment. Oh, well, I suppose technically the cartels are anti-establishment. They're going to be aligning with the cartels. It's like making the cartels the establishment, which we've all said for a long time. This government, or every single aspect of the left-wing government, it seems acting like an organised crime syndicate. This is literally now saying they need to form a commission with the Mexican drug cartels. This is nuts. Policy states that children in primary schools should be taught how to take drugs in a professional, social and health education lessons to improve the safety of all who use drugs, not to stop people from taking them so that they don't ruin their communities, ruin their relationships, ruin their families, right? Get caught up in flurries of addiction where they're taking their TV, they're taking everything from their house and selling off just to feed this addiction. But they'll get so addicted, they'll continue voting for the people that bring them the product that they want. So now, again, everything being done in the pursuit of political power and votes, the Greens want to turn your communities into places like this in the pursuit of political power. Let me introduce you, ladies and gentlemen, to Kensington, Philadelphia, if you haven't seen it. Not enough? Let me show you some more. Let me show you some more about the really sorry states that a lot of these people who've been failed systematically by generations of government, exactly in line with what the Greens' philosophy is, tolerance and quote-unquote understanding and not stigmatizing these things for whatever reason, right? And the kind of situations that they end up enabling. This should really scare you, ladies and gentlemen. This should really scare you. Deeply, deeply troubling. Very, very troubling indeed. This is what the Greens, and seemingly, if it is to be believed, Plaid Cymru, want for your communities. They want them looking like something. Just bring this up on screen again. They want it looking like something out of The Walking fucking Dead. Honestly. And there are people out there that believe that these people are anti-establishment. Yeah, you can say that Reform are the establishment and also say that the Greens are the establishment as well. This is literally just what the left are doing out in America. Safe injection sites. How to take drugs safely. Whereas maybe at one point we taught kids why you shouldn't take them. Why they were bad. But no, the Greens and seemingly Plaid would rather have a bunch of mindless crack addicts voting for them. So at the very least, it would be a block that they could constantly pander to by waving the little thing in their face. Be like, X in the ballot box, please. These people are disgustingly evil and should be viewed with the contempt and scorn, every single fucking bit of it, that they deserve.
Decriminalisation, or legalisation allow drug users to inject illicit drugs. Just last week, the UK government announced its intention to conduct a review into drugs policy, including treatment options. Unfortunately, they pre-decided not to consider the questions of decriminalisation or legalisation. There's a clear public health reason for providing a safer environment for people to use drugs, such as safer injecting zones. These sites allow drug users to inject illicit drugs.
So again, it was cut off slightly, but you heard everything that you needed to hear from that one clip. This is from Plaid's 2024 manifesto, pledged to decriminalise illegal drugs. It also called for the criminal records, according to Doge Wales, for the criminal records of people convicted of illegal drug offences to be wiped, which, as far as I know, is even more extreme than what Zach Polanski and his Greens want to do. So they want to do, they want to then stop funding a bunch of taxpayer money into Narcan and all the rest of it, right? And think of all the extra taxpayer money you'll need to take care of these people when they end up with cardiac arrests on the side of the fucking road. All of this stuff, right? And I get it. These are the victims. They are the victims of the cartels and the government that enable them for their own profit, right? I feel sorry for the people on that street, right? There's a certain element of human accountability, obviously. Humans accountable for their own actions, right? Once you reach a certain age, anyway. These people, these adults, they're responsible for the decisions they make. Understanding that there's a predatory system at play as well that wants to turn them into these mindless zombies and wants to do it under the guise of empathy. How evil is that? Wants to do it under the guise of kindness and tolerance. It's not so kind then when, on top of this, all of your public services, even before this, are increasingly falling apart. So that a woman, 97 years old, and this is where we're going to finish this story today, ladies and gentlemen, is found dead on the floor of her home after being told she would have to wait 10 days for an ambulance. For what? Only something as small, relatively, as a suspected hip break. But nonetheless, she was told the ambulance wait for her would be 10 days. And there's the rest of our quote-unquote anti-establishment parties wanting to legalise, it seems, some of the most destructive compounds on the planet. Woman, 97, was found dead on the floor of her home after being told she would have to wait 10 days for an ambulance for a suspected hip break. This is from Newport in the Isle of Wight, ladies and gentlemen. Babette Burge was found on the floor of her home in Newport, Isle of Wight by a carer on 19th of October 2025. Just 5 days earlier, a paramedic from a local GP had attended Ms. Burge's home to assess her condition and have found that her leg was shortened and rotated, a sign of a fractured hip. The pensioner was told she would need to wait 10 days for an ambulance to St. Mary's Hospital in Newport, but suffered a fall before the transfer could take place. She was found on the floor of her home, struggling to breathe by her carer, and died shortly before 1 p.m. on that day. The inquest at the Isle of Wight's coroner's office has now given pneumonia as Ms. Burge's cause of death, with immobility and a left femoral fracture as recorded contributing factors. So this now, ladies and gentlemen, is indicative of a problem that we have. We already have massive problems with regards to the health service. Rather than fixing them, rather than taking the actual routes that we know are going to fix them, because they would be seen as politically incorrect or whatever, there's all these labels tied up around them, because there's no way of ever talking about any of these issues with regards to the burden that's been placed on them, and the burden has been placed on them pretty much solely by immigration. That's the reason why it's been taboo to talk about anything with regards to any of these topics, right? And you have 97-year-old women dying on the floors of their homes from pneumonia after they've been told 10 days to wait for an ambulance. Yet the Greens and Plaid say the main priority, or one of the main priorities that they're concerned with, is making sure addicts can inject, but they do it safely. Well, it's not so safe for the rest of us in society, is it? Wouldn't be so safe for Miss Babette here, for Miss Burge. Why should she have to suffer for that? No, why should people in conditions in the future have to suffer for that? Because budgets which went on clean needles and Narcan could have went on making sure that our ambulances were able to attend to people who really needed it. But no, your political establishment, you see, it's also revealed that mottling was found in her skin, a sign of reduced blood flow often caused by cold temperatures, poor circulation. Poor girl probably wouldn't have been able to afford to put the heating on either. The government's so focused on taking that away from you as well. August 12th for a full inquest. Why should just regular people have to suffer? Because our government, our parties, are so content on putting their faux virtue over the actual safety and prosperity of their people. Because they hate you and they're evil, ladies and gentlemen. Remember that the next time one of them calls you a Nazi on the internet. Remember these are the people that you're dealing with. And then remember, you will be on the side of the good. And that'll do it for today. Thank you very much for joining us today, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you not so much enjoyed it, but found it useful. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you for watching. Make sure you follow me on all the other outlets as well. As I mentioned before, make sure you go check out my conversation with Callum Barker. Make sure you go check out all the conversations, the interview playlist. If anybody's around in Cardiff tomorrow, make sure you try and tune in to support Public Child Protection Wales, Kimberley Isherwood and those guys. And if anybody wants to support the show via the memberships and whatever else, or via one-time donation, via Buy Me a Coffee, Rumble, Crypto Tip Jar, whatever it may be that you'll be able to support the show, I'll be immensely grateful, as always. Thank you ever so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. You take very, very good care of yourselves now. Diolch yn fawr. Hwyl fawr. See you next time. You take care. Godspeed.